pass things around and make fun of people and mock people and put them down. Careful.
Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views on myself, Salailo Makwidir. And we're going to be shifting focus now to a very, very important subject. I'm sure we all know by now that on the 3rd of January 2026, the United States carried out airstrikes in Venezuela and detained President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, a move widely condemned as illegal under international law. And this adds to years of sanctions and external pressure that have essentially devastated everyday life for millions of Venezuelans. And to help us understand the reality behind the headlines, and just to unpack, just briefly what this moment means, not just for Venezuela, but also for the people of the global south, we're joined by Fasiha Hassen, who has visited Venezuela and seen his people's resilience firsthand, and she'll be giving us a bit more insight on how you and I should be interpreting this, and what moment are we in recent human history. Fasiha, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to News and Views. Really appreciate you giving us your time.
Thank you. I'm always happy to be on your show.
The situation in Venezuela is unprecedented, especially in recent history. We all know about the sanctions, the economic pressure that the country has been put under, and now this direct intervention, which has created extraordinary conditions. From your perspective, as someone that has visited Venezuela and that has felt the country and its essence in real time, how should people in the global south interpret these events in terms of general international law, sovereignty, and just power dynamics that are at play at this current moment?
Yeah, so in 2022, I was very lucky to actually be selected to go as part of a delegation with other public representatives. And we went directly to Caracas, which is actually where President Maduro was kidnapped from. And you can note to the words that we're using here, because if another sovereign country takes and actually kidnaps the sovereign leader of another country, it is quite literally not only a kidnapping, but a direct violation of international law. And I think there's a very important point about seeing it for what it is. And I'm very glad you've asked this question, because us in South Africa, we need to be acutely aware. And this really is an act of colonialism. It's an act of imperialism. And the interesting thing about it, in some ways, is the people of Venezuela are incredibly conscientized. They are very well organized. I mean, even if you see now on the streets, people are protesting in Venezuela, not necessarily only for President Maduro, because it's actually more than that. It's more about the sovereignty, the autonomy, the independence of the people. And they also are very importantly saying we must see this action for what it is, which is a grab of resources. Venezuela has the largest oil deposit in the world, more than Saudi, more than the Arab Gulf, more than basically everyone that we know. And it's also very important to note that when I was there at that time, apart from them being under sanctions, just for context, it takes 5 days for the oil to move from Venezuela up the coast to the US. And when you're talking about Saudi and the other parts where we know the OPEC countries, where the oil comes from there as well, it takes about 45 days. And so you're starting to see a picture that's being created of a Trump, but also of a US administration, who very shockingly is not even pretending to be a colonial or imperial power. And my last point on this is, and we must also see this for what it is, although it is, I think, a long process, we are witnessing the fall of empire. And people may disagree with me. People may say, yeah, but he's exerted extreme power by kidnapping another head of state. I actually think that we are seeing the kicks of a dying horse. We must understand an empire doesn't fall in a day. In the same way people say Rome was not built in a day, but we are seeing a US with waning influence. We are seeing a US who's realizing they are not at the center of global politics. You've got a leader who is a fascist, who is a megalomaniac, an egomaniac, who's also just trying to regain what control and power there is. And you're seeing very, I would say, desperate and dramatic action. And that, for me, actually is evidence further of the fall of empire.
Then I guess my next question is, how does the rest of the world, really the global south, respond to this? This shift of a global superpower, which America, I think we shouldn't make any mistakes, still are to an extent, a shift away from multilateralism from their end. As you mentioned, just racist, xenophobic leader at their helm, and no one essentially speaking out against this administration, which is wreaking havoc, to the rest of the world. How should everyone else respond? What's the correct way to go about things as we find ourselves in this crazy new world order where it seems there's no hold bars, especially from the United States of America and its allies?
Yeah, look, of course, they are incredibly powerful. I don't want anyone to misinterpret my statements. They are still at the helm of a lot of what's going on. But part of what we as South Africa have been doing, and I think that's why it's about what we do sort of next, has been to support what we call a multipolar world. And you mentioned multilateralism, about using different institutions and forums to work alongside each other instead of exerting harsh force, like actual physical force on another state. But why I talk about a multipolar world, we are saying as the South African government, but also as South Africa, as the global South, that gone are the days where there will be one power in the world that decides everything. And we're already seeing that. We're already seeing the rise of China. We're seeing the rise of different BRICS plus nations, of course, which we form a part of. And you must also see this attack in that very context. And this is very important for us as South Africa. Because we must not think that because it's happening there, because Venezuela has oil, we are safe, we are fine. And it's not to be alarmist, it's to be realistic. We have a number of rare earth metals. We have the largest deposit of platinum, of manganese in the world. And it's an interesting thing, when the tariffs, the US tariffs came in, everybody was only talking about the tariffs on our agriculture, on all the different elements. Let me tell you what was not given a tariff. Platinum group metals, as I mentioned, those rare earth metals, the manganese, all these different things. I'm just making mention of specific ones, but we have incredible deposits of materials that are actually used to create battery energy storage. Now that is another huge thing that's going on in the world. The scramble rather for resources in the new era. So it may not be gold and diamonds that people are fighting over now, but it's going to be things that create microchips. It's going to be things that get them into the next phase of energy, which I mentioned now in the battery energy storage. And so while it becomes something that seems academic, we must never forget that if it is today Venezuela, Palestine, Sudan, whoever else in the world, even Nigeria, we must talk about this. Nigeria is in the crosshairs of the US, and for all of our other geopolitical issues with Nigeria, we must stand with them. Because if you touch one of us, you have touched all of us. And let's not think that South Africa is off the menu. South Africa is not off the menu. In fact, they are setting the grounds and the framework, as they did with Maduro around drug trafficking, etc., which he says is untrue and will be tested. Of course, we must see it again for what it is, oil. They're setting a term of reference with us with the incorrect notion of a white genocide, which is completely untrue, right? But it can give them grounds for anything that they may want to do, whether it is sanctions, whether it's something else. And so I must say this as a South African MP, as a South African person, and to our listeners, that we must stand together with our brothers and sisters from all over the world. Because if we do not, there will come a time where we will need to be stood with. We will need that solidarity. And it may not be the US. It may be something completely different. But it is about community, and it is about understanding that we are now in a world in which there's going to be a lot more conflict. And there will be a lot more conflict because we're seeing a shift in power.
Most definitely. And I want to move away just a bit, from the geopolitics aspect of things to the human dimension. And I think because you visited Venezuela and you've seen firsthand the human impact of the United States and its sanctions and the leadership contestations in that part of the world. Venezuelans are demanding of dignity, they are demanding of self-determination and basic needs. How do we then balance analysis of power like we've been with attention to the lived realities of people on the ground?
And it is the people on the ground who will always suffer most. Whether it is a Maduro regime, whether it is the opposition, whether it is the US, it is people like you and I who are struggling and who are terrified and who are so anxious because you're trying to go about normal life. You're trying to make a good life for your children, for yourselves. You're really just trying to build something. And then because of situations outside of your control, your entire life is thrown into turmoil. And that is actually what's happening now. We're seeing all these different interviews of different people. And this is why I'm not problematizing people's views. You don't have to like or dislike Maduro. We're making a different point entirely. And it's about the human aspect of it. And that's why I felt the need actually to put out on social media that we stand with the people of Venezuela. You'll notice I didn't mention some of the other political aspects, because when I went there and interacted with people, you saw the harsh reality and the pain of what sanctions can do, right? And I mean US sanctions that are very, very hypocritical, that are, they're not going to sanction Israel, but they are sanctioning Venezuela, Cuba, Iran, for example, and people really struggling. But on the other side of that, you also saw ingenuity. You saw young people who are so incredibly conscientized, who even then in 2022 were saying, we are well aware of the US interest in our country. We're not going to pretend and think that what we do is separate to what they want from us or what they are doing. And they were so organized, even as youth groupings, as we met young mayors, we met young MPs, but just young activists in communities who were organizing at the time primary health care in the clinics, well, there actually weren't enough clinics, but they were bringing in different vaccinations, etc., for the young kids. We got introduced to mamas and gogos, women, who are the centers of society. And what Venezuela was very interesting in doing as a state, as a socialist state, saying, if we know we have all these aunties, gogos, tannies, mamas, etc., who organize in our communities, let's think about it. When there's a funeral, when there's a problem in society, who do people go to? They go to these mamas and these gogos and these aunties to help. And it's a whole thing, right? So just groceries and the cooking. It's not about, it's about community. And what the state there was able to do was say, let's take these women organizations, because they're not formal. Let's give them assistance. Let's give them money. Let's help them organize within society. So they were making in school. They were making sure the kids had eaten. They were making sure that the community safety and security was top notch. They were working against drug trafficking in their own communities. And the reason I cite this example is because there is an untold story of Venezuelan people every day who were, despite being in the crosshairs of the US imperialist power, actually finding a way not only to make life, but to build community and to say, we're not going to be destroyed just because you don't like us or you don't want us to survive. And that's the story that needs to be told. And their fight for independence and their fight for self-determination, in the same way we're fighting for Palestinians, in the same way we're fighting for Sudan, we must understand that people's power is actually the most important thing in this discussion.
Most definitely. And
this is Salam Media.
You South African, of course. You anxious about the future. We've got you covered. Build on your wealth portfolio with Randry Jewelers Gold Coin Exchange. Visit us at 151 Stephen Dlamini Road, Musgrave, Durban, or call us on 031-202-4700 for more information. Randry Jewelers Gold Coin Exchange, your passport to gold investment.
When disaster strikes, families lose everything in an instant. Homes destroyed, communities displaced. Hope fades into uncertainty. Our Global Emergency Fund ensures we respond without delay, delivering food, water, shelter, and healthcare to families in need. To support our Global Emergency Fund, visit islamicrelief.org.za.
Yasin Badat Financial Advisory. Are your financial goals feeling out of reach? Yasin Badat Financial Advisory is here to turn your aspirations into achievements. Our dedicated team, armed with a history of success, is ready to guide you through the complex nature of financial and investment planning. Whether you're a seasoned investor or new to the game, our personalized solutions cater to your unique goals and risk appetite. Trust in our commitment to transparency, integrity, and excellence. Ready to unlock a world of financial freedom? Partner with us today. Call Yasin Badat Financial Advisory at +27 33 346 2071 or visit www.yasinbadat.com. Yasin Badat Financial Advisory, guiding you to financial success.
Our brothers and sisters in Palestine are enduring unimaginable hardships. Ashraful Aid teams are on the ground, delivering crucial aid to those in need. But we can't do it alone. Palestine is suffering and they need your help. Your support can make a world of difference. Visit www.ashrafulaid.org today and donate to bring hope, relief, and healing to those who are in need.
When the perfect blend of stylish decor, exquisite halal cuisine, and warm hospitality come together, it could only mean Al Bayt Lodge, your true home away from home. Al Bayt is the ideal heaven for families, business people, and tourists with its 4-star family rooms and other luxurious facilities. Conveniently situated close to Port Elizabeth Airport, the beach, and other amenities, your stay will be truly unforgettable, as you'll be taking home lasting memories of the warm hospitality, the serenity and tranquility that Al Bayt has to offer. For reservations, call 041 583 6415 or visit www.albaytlodge.co.za.
Breaking stereotypes, moving boundaries, joining hands. Salam Media. Humanity sets the agenda.
Just the interconnectedness of all of these atrocities that we are seeing. Very, very important question. What warnings should us as South Africans take from Venezuela's situation about the fragility of international norms and just the importance of coordinated actions across the global South?
I think we should continue investing in multilateralism. Just because you have a world power that doesn't see value in it doesn't mean that there's no value. Our biggest flex at the moment is BRICS Plus, and it's not just in terms of geopolitics, but also in terms of the economics. So if the US wants to punish us further and further with the removal of AGOA, we must open new markets. And I know Minister Parks Tau, who's the Minister of Trade and Industry, has been hard at work to open up completely new markets outside of the US to ensure that we cushion the blow. And I'll give you an example that I think some of our listeners may be interested in. We are now becoming a big exporter of halal meat to the UAE, to actually it's more Saudi, Bahrain, that sort of part of the world. And it's just an example, right? There are many, many more. But the point we're making is we need to, before anything negative happens, anticipate and close the gap. Algeria actually is one of those countries that we're also looking at. So we're looking at new markets entirely. And that's one of the things that we have to do. But for me, the most important beyond that is to stand our ground. Now, there's differing views, and you're seeing all sorts of political analysis in the country, ranging from very right-wing to very left-wing analysis about what we should and shouldn't do. Some are saying, don't piss off the Americans more. Some are saying, stand your ground. Some are saying, let's find a middle point. I will say this. I do think it's important to stand our ground. Trump will decide what they're going to do regardless of our stance, by the way, regardless of whether we pander to them or not. So let us at least A, have our principles, but B, decide on our own terms. Because what we cannot do, and I think it's so many different leaders, Guevara and others have said it, even our Mandelas, our Tambos of the world have said that we cannot live in servitude. And we as South Africans have fought a fascist power before. We haven't necessarily always used the words fascism to describe the apartheid government. They were racist, as you said. They were white supremacists. The reason why AfriForum and Kali Creel and these guys think that they can go run to Trump and find a safe haven there, they are kin. And they are kin particularly because they are fascists. So we must never think that our freedom is going to always be there. And we must understand that it may require a fight. It may not be the kind of fight we've had before of revolution, but it requires a fight to the global stage. And we must never, ever forget that whatever is being fought in Venezuela is being fought here, is being fought all over the world against global powers. And I'll end on this point. The US may be a huge, and in fact is a huge challenge, but in the shifting global order, we must ensure that we also don't become, I think, the lackeys of China or any other global power. We need to ensure that whatever era we enter into in the next 100 years, that we as South Africa decide what our place is in it, and no one else decides for us.
Most definitely. Finally, before I let you go, Fasiha, how do we ensure that this crisis doesn't fade from public consciousness? and that attention, advocacy, and solidarity are sustained. We're having a conversation with my colleagues that, they might keep Maduro, in prison for long amounts of years until people forget about him. Someone even used the example of Rida bin Sali, Tunisian, who was arrested, detained as part of the US war on terror. He was never charged with the crime in all of those years, I think 20 years that they kept him. And then year after year after year, never charged, and was just kept in the consciousness of people. How do we change that narrative? In this crisis, it doesn't reach that point.
I actually think that is probably going to be what they try to do, that they keep Maduro and his wife in jail as a symbol of what could happen. You'll note that they're already saying to the Colombian president, who is incredible, by the way, on the issue of Palestine. They have sanctioned Palestine. They have stopped all coal exports to Palestine, etc. So they're even saying to the Colombian president, be careful. See what we've done to Maduro. We'll do it to you. So I think that we are seeing, or going to see, a very long and drawn out from the US. And it is important for South Africans not to forget. This is why I keep wanting to tie to issues. So, and we are fighting employment. We're fighting better economic outlook for the benefit of our people. We need to link to that of Venezuela, for example. So now is the time to stand by them. Now is the time to find those commonalities and link them very directly together. And I think therein lies not the work of the state or the government. No, therein lies the work of community. In the same way that so many of our listeners will have direct contact with some people in Gaza and the West Bank, we need to create those linkages with Venezuela. We need to say, well, how do we export certain things from them and import others to them? Remember, now those sanctions may not necessarily apply to oil, they never really have, but they are going to try and harm them in other ways. And there's ways in which we can help, but there's also ways in which they can help us. There's so many things that they are good at, even around virtual currency and how to maneuver around the Americans, that I think we need to learn from. And when you build linkages, you avoid a situation where people fade into the distance. But let me end with this. It's almost not about personality type. It's almost not about being a person, but a global fight against colonialism, the global fight against imperialism and fascism. And I can guarantee you, Trump is not done with the world, and he's not done with the global South. And my big worry is who's next. So is everybody else. And if Nigeria is one of those targets, we must realize how close this thing is, because it's on our doorstep and we can't run away from it.
Most definitely. Fasiha, thank you so much for joining us. 8th birthday. I'm sure you've recovered from the festivities of North 14 years. Segment.